So here today with Ben, targeting a few plaice on Chesil. As you can see, it's scorching hot, but we're doing okay so far. Rig wise at the moment I'm on 2 hooks, normally be on 3, but obviously with the glassy calm conditions just 2 hooks sometimes cast that little bit further. So basically Portsmouth loop, 24-inch top snood down to a little size 2 Camazam B940, and then slightly shorter 20-inch bottom snood. I do mine slightly differently, so I have the swivel trapped immediately above the lead clip. I just think it interferes with the bait a little bit less there. It's a little bit neater. So yeah, I'll just run through a quick bait up. I'm going to go for fresh gutted black lug on the top snood. So just going to give the lug a little slap, firm it up. Now I don't particularly want that whole large worm, so what I'm going to do is just trim off the slightly saggy end part. Same with the sandy tail. So I'm left with, what's that, probably 1.5 to 2 inches of nice firm lug. And that's going to be probably my slightly less bulky bait, so I'm going to put that on my top snood just to make it a little bit more aerodynamic. That's probably firm enough as it is, but being summer, quite a few little crabs and shrimps and things in the water, what I'm going to do is just give that a little whip with some very, very fine latex elastic, just a few turns, and you do find that gives you an extra sort of 5 or 6 minutes on the seabed then before you're stripped, which can be quite important. So just up and down a couple of times, snap that off, and then really importantly, as we're trying to fish a reasonable way out, and what will happen for those of you new to the sport is as that's going through the air, the wind will be blowing the bait up the line. So we've got a little tiny power gum stop knot, I don't know if you can see that, and a little tiny sequin, which I'm just going to slide that down on top of the bait, and then that can't go anywhere. It's going to be round the hook. So that's the top one done, and then the bottom one, what I'm going to do, Ben's donated me one of his little blow lug from Cornwall. Again, I'm going to nip the sandy tail off. Now it's quite a fat worm, so that's probably going to wobble a little bit in the air, so I'm just going to nick it with my nail, just pull out some of the guts, make it a little bit more streamlined. That's going to go onto my bottom hook first, thread that all the way around. These are pretty tough, so you won't need any elastic with these, and then I'm just going to tip that off with a little section of ragworm. That'll do 2 things. It'll give the bait a little bit of movement on the point, but it will also stop that softer lug sliding down over. And then once again, what I'm going to do is just slide that little stop knot down just to make the bait nice and compact. So here we have a couple of nice compact aerodynamic baits which we can cast out a reasonable way. Nice long snoods, little flutter in the tide, and hopefully pick up a couple of nice plaice. First fish of the day for me. I was getting a little bit worried. Ben had the first 2, but we've got a plaice, half a black tip with squid. Right, so getting towards the time of day where we might have a chance of a ray now on Chesil, so just starting to put the first bait out. So I've got some launce here. I wouldn't normally use eel or launce this size on Chesil because sometimes the extra meters are important, so what I'll do is I'll actually cut this one down a little bit. So I'm just going to take it across there and across the gills where all the blood is, So I'm left with something probably about the size of a medium sand eel, but just a little bit thicker in the body. As you can see, this one's a lovely kind of silver grey colour, which I think is really important. If you get brown eels where the bellies are burst in, personally I find my catch rates on them are pretty poor. So all I tend to do is, this is either a 2.0 or a 3.0 short shank. I go in just in front of the gills, thread the hook in, not too deep, keep the eel frozen, and then out of the gills. If you pull the hook through, basically what that does is it puts the hook where all the blood's going to come out around the gills, but then also it's exposed the eye of the hook, which means you can whip around that and it completely locks it in place. A lot of guys I know, and I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, everybody's got their own preference, but a lot of people I see thread them on like a worm, and they can slide down and mask the hook. This way it can't really do that. So I grab a bait needle. I like the little carbon fibre ones, I find they don't bend. Lay that against the eel. Thinnest elastic that you can get. This is latex one from Tronix Pro, I believe, or Baitex. And then I start to whip. I pay particular attention to the area around the hook and the knot, because that's going to completely lock it in place. Don't be shy about using plenty of elastic. It's broken mine there. Fish don't know what it is, and it's so thin it practically dissolves into the bait. So when I get to the eye, I'll literally put plenty on around there, use that knot as a little stopper, and then just work my way up. Not too much pressure, keep the tension nice and even, right to the top. What you're looking for is just a nice solid streamlined shape that's going to sit in tight behind your lead for casting, and it's going to survive against crabs and shrimps and all the other things that are in the water at this time of year for a good sort of half an hour. Again, just pay a bit more attention to the area around the hook and finish it off with a few turns on the same spot. Pull the line tight to straighten it, and you'll see that hook is solid in there now. It's not going to twist round. Needle comes out, and then just a bit of added security, or a little bait stop there. I was a bit lazy this morning. I tend to use power gum stop knots because I find that they're just a bit tighter in terms of gripping the line. This is just a little float stop. But slide that down onto my sequin, and obviously as that's going out, the wind pressure can't then blow that back up the hook. But yeah, that's typical of the sort of bait I'd use on Chesil for a ray, really. Placing a dab, so it went a little bit quiet, and we're now just starting to get the flood tide coming through from the right, and you've just had a fish as well, haven't you? And then a nice double shot. So in fact I'd have dabbed the cast before as well, so we've had what's that, 4 fish and a couple of chucks now, which is nice. I think the top one was just on half a fresh black, the bottom one was on half a black tipped with a tiny thin bit of squid. Okay, so one of the main baits on Chesil in the summer is fresh mackerel. We've just managed to get one here after a lot of effort. So I just thought I'd run through a few of the ways which I tend to use them in the summer. So first one I find is they're one of the very best baits for catching rays of all types really, outfish sand eel. So I'll quickly do one of those for you now. So I quite like the tail fillet for rays. Never cut towards you like I'm doing, not great practice. So nice little tail fillet like that. This one's only been out of the water a few minutes. And then what I like to try and do with the scissors, Just make that a little bit more streamlined. A lot of the time large lumps of fish on Chesil aren't that effective. It is better to use a little bit smaller bait so you can cast it a little bit further. So I'll just take some of the flesh off with the scissors, just thin it out a little bit. This is going onto a hook of about size 2.0 or 3.0, so it's not looking for a massive bait, so you're left with something of that kind of order there. Quite a thin bait. Find a hook, there we go. So all I do with the hook is through the thick end once and then back out, same as we did with the sand eel. So basically what you're left with, there's a bit of a theme here. The eye of the hook is proud, so you can basically use lots of elastic around that and lock it into place. So what we then do, baiting needle underneath, nice thin cotton as before, and we're just looking to get this into a nice streamlined sausage shape, but with plenty of cotton around the eye to stop it slipping down. So again, don't be too shy with the elastic. Fish don't know what it is. It's not like we're using the thick shearing elastic. This is ultra fine latex. And just start to pinch and squeeze it a little bit at the sides so that you get it into a rough shape right to the top. Basically the same as what we did with the sand eel earlier. Two areas I like to pay attention to. The first one is where the line first enters the bait up here, because obviously you haven't gone through the flesh there, so plenty of elastic. And then around the actual eye of the hook as well, because that's what's going to lock it into place. And you get to here, just kind of give it a good squeeze, and then plenty of elastic around the bend of the hook. A little bit time consuming, but I always think it's better to make the bait nice and neat. It's going to fly better, it's going to go further, and you know, it's not hectic fishing here today, so I'd sooner spend 5 minutes making sure my next bait that's going to be sat out there for probably 35-40 minutes is a good one really. So snap that off, needle out, just give it a little bit of a straighten, and then with the scissors, any little loose ends like this that might cause it to spin in the air, just neaten those up, and you're basically left with a nice cylindrical ray bait which will cast a long way, but plenty of blood and scent, should hopefully catch a nice small-eyed. Once again, that won't move, but just for added security, power gum stop knot or similar and a sequin, just slide that down onto the top of the bait, a little bit of flesh there, then it's job done. Okay, so when you're fishing, particularly the eastern end of Chesil in the summer for things like bream and gurnard, smaller sections of mackerel or rag tipper mackerel is a really good bait to use. So I just thought I'd run through how I tend to bait up. It's not the only way, it's just the way I like to do it. It works for me. So with a nice fresh mackerel here, just cut a nice little thin strip, like so. Now that is going to be too thick to put on a hook, so what I tend to do is just get my scissors, take off some of the excess flesh so that you're left with a nice thin strip. It's not going to mask a small size 2 or 4 hook. And then I like to take a ragworm. I can find the right size one. Little size 2 Camazan B940, perfect for summer fishing. thread a nice little section of that up the line, not too much, nip it off, just probably 1.5 inches maybe. Take your mackerel. The silver end is slightly tougher, so I like to go through the silver end once, back through, take your scissors, just snip it off underneath. So you've got a little thumbnail size piece, sequin, and power gum stop knot comes down. So basically you've got just a nice small compact bait. I'd probably be fishing that on a 3-hook rig, so you don't want anything massive, but that'll be perfect for the likes of bream, gurnard, anything in the summer will take that. And then the other way that can be quite effective as well, if you take the tail section, as I said before, never cut towards you like I'm doing, just a habit, not great practice. So take your tail section of mackerel, and then basically with the scissors cut that in half. So you're left with a little strip like that. Again, some of the flesh is going to need to come off there. That's too thick for a size 2. So yeah, just neaten it up a little bit. So yeah, so you're left with a little strip like that. And then, as we did with the larger ray bait, basically through the skin side, about 1/2 inch from the end, and then back out through the skin side. So again, you've got the exposed knot, so you can whip over that and lock it in place. Bait needle, ultra fine Tronix Pro Baitex. I'm not sponsored by them, it's just the best on the market in my opinion. And then whip that into a nice little sausage shape basically. Plenty of elastic around the eye. Basically making sure that it doesn't slip down and mask the hook. Needle out, give it a little tweak and a straighten up, and then with the scissors, any excess just neaten up. So you're basically left with a nice small fillet. It's not going to mask the hook, but that will take pretty much most of the summer species on Chesil. Gurnards, bream, etc. And then, as before, stop knot comes down, little sequin to stop it riding up over the hook eye. Then that's good to go. That would be part of probably a 3-hook rig for me. All good. Right, so one of the things we've been finding today is we've got incredibly clear water, very, very still, summer-like conditions, and most of the place have been coming on quite an old school method actually, just a little tiny strip of squid underneath the lugworm. So I'll just show you what we've been doing. So this is a big, thick English squid, so you don't want much of it, just a really, really thin slither basically. Something of that order. Chop the top off, it's a bit too long. So yeah, incredibly thin. But then half a black lug there, which I've whipped on. And then this English squid is incredibly tough, so just hooking it once through there, turning it round, and then back through a second time. So it does two things really. You've got this lovely fluttering in the water, but also it's protecting that black lug above as well. So basically we'll pull the stop knot down and the little sequin. I usually put that on my bottom snood, because what will then happen is that bit of squid will be resting against the lead. So if you tend to have it on your top hook, it's flapping around all over the show when you're casting, and it probably just lose a few meters over the course of your cast. But tucked behind the lead, it's not so bad. But that's been the one today that's picked up most of the flats.